Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to zoom right past the White House and focus on the leaders who are, well, literally closer to home, your governor and your mayor. Let's get into it. All right, let me ask you something right off the bat. Who do you think has a bigger impact on your day-to-day life? Is it the President of the United States, or is it your local mayor? Most of us probably think of the president first, but is that really the whole story?
You know, the answer might actually surprise you. While the president is dealing with huge national and international issues that fill up the news, it's your governor and mayor who are actually managing the stuff you interact with every single day. We're talking about the police, the fire department, the public schools, even the crews that pave the streets you drive on.
So, to really get a grip on their impact, we need to open up their playbook. What powers do they actually have? What are their jobs, really?
A really good way to think about a governor is to imagine a state-level president. I mean, the roles are incredibly similar. A governor enforces state laws, just like a president enforces federal ones. They propose a state budget, they're the head of their party within the state, and they're even the commander-in-chief of the state's National Guard. It's pretty much the same job description, just on a different scale.
Now here's a really cool power that a lot of governors have that the president does not, the line item veto. So imagine a massive spending bill comes to their desk. Instead of a simple all-or-nothing yes or no, a governor can actually go through it with a red pen, metaphorically speaking, and strike out specific lines of funding they don't like. It's like a surgical tool for controlling the budget.
Okay, so let's shift gears and go down to the local level. In cities, things get even more interesting because it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. The title mayor doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. It all comes down to how a city decides to set up its government.
You've basically got two main models. In what's called a strong mayor system, the mayor is like the city's CEO. They've got real power. They hire and fire department heads, they control the budget. But in a weak mayor system, most of that power actually sits with the city council. The mayor in that case might be more of a ceremonial figure, kind of like the official ribbon cutter in chief. So we've seen their powers on paper. Now let's connect all that to the real world, to the services you actually see and use every single day. Just look at this list. This is basically a catalog of modern life, right? Public safety, the quality of your kid's school, the condition of the roads and bridges you use, even the parks where you hang out on the weekend. Every single one of these things falls under the management of your state and local leaders. Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. Zoning. This is a huge local power. Zoning is the set of rules that decides what can get built where. It's the reason you can't build a giant factory right next to a school, and it dictates how tall a new apartment building can be. Zoning literally shapes the look and feel of your entire neighborhood. So here's the bottom line. The decisions made in your state capital and city hall have a direct, immediate, and tangible impact on your life. The quality of your tap water, the funding for your local library, the amount of traffic you sit in on your commute. These things are all the direct result of what your state and local government is doing.
But what happens when people feel like their leaders are failing them, or even abusing their power? Well, that brings us to the ultimate check on that power, accountability. And what happens when government and citizens clash?
When things get really bad and the usual checks and balances aren't cutting it, there are two last resort tools to remove an executive from office. The first is impeachment, which is a formal process driven by the legislature. But the other one, a recall election, puts the decision directly in the hands of the voters.
And this isn't just some abstract idea. Right now, 19 states have laws on the books that allow voters to recall their governor. It's a really powerful and pretty controversial form of direct democracy that lets citizens take action in between the regular election cycles. Of course, this is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, supporters say it's an absolutely vital tool to hold leaders accountable and fight corruption. But on the other hand, critics warn that it can create constant political instability, it can be misused for purely partisan reasons, and not to mention, it costs taxpayers a ton of money. It really gets at a core tension in how democracy works.
Speaking of tension, let's look at a case that pushed the limits of local government power all the way to the Supreme Court. It's the landmark 2005 case, Kelo v. the City of New London. And it's really a story about a city's grand vision for the future, clashing head-on with a few homeowners who simply refuse to leave.
So, here's the setup. The city of New London in Connecticut was having a tough time economically, so they came up with this big plan to revitalize their waterfront. But to do it, they needed to clear an entire neighborhood. So they used their power of eminent domain. That's the government's ability to take private property for public use, to try and seize private homes, to then give that land to a private developer. The homeowners sued, and their argument was simple. This isn't public use.
The arguments couldn't have been more different. The city basically said, look, creating jobs and growing the tax base benefits the entire community, so that counts as a public purpose. But the homeowners argued this was a dangerous overreach. To them, public use meant building a road or a school, not just handing land over to a private corporation. They warned that if the city won, no one's home would ever be safe.
So, what happened? Well, in a really divided decision, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of the city. The majority agreed that promoting economic development could be considered a valid public use, and that decision dramatically expanded the power of local governments across the country. But I want to leave you with this. This is a quote from Justice Sandra Day O'Connor's powerful dissenting opinion. It just perfectly captures the huge stakes of this decision. The local leaders we elect wield an incredible amount of power. Power that can rebuild a city, but also power that can take someone's home. And the question it leaves us with is, where exactly do we draw that line?